Teleology, which is really just looking for another name for talking about a future structural state. And so, for example, in the rhizomatic, I want a fruiting. So can you talk about endpoints and varieties of endpoints, and what is the discomfort with that?
People who don't believe in whether it's nomadic theory or any of the post-structuralism would say they have no teleology, they have no end aims, it's pure relativism, it's just aimless drifting. And this is also the Zizek and Badiou line on the alleged lack of political consistency of these theories. And I could not disagree more. What is certainly not fixed in a nomadic philosophy or in Gilles Deleuze and Deleuze-Guattari's thought is a fixed teleology, an arrival point that would somewhat determine the trajectory of the whole exercise. We are here in a Spinoza's universe married with, in a hybrid mixture, with a Bergsonian philosophy of time, which means that the crucial thing is to actually actualize projects that unfold into possible futures, into possible worlds. And that project is a praxis. It is something that we can only do collectively, purposefully, in a selected group of people who agree that this is what needs to be done, and act then accordingly. So there is not a prefixed teleology, there are processes of actualization that aim at creating sustainable futures, because the analysis that bases the whole exercise is that advanced capitalism is eating up the future. It's a system that gives us no respite whatsoever. It destroys the very premises of its own existence, and we see this clearly with the environmental crisis, but we can also look at the financial crisis, and there is no sustainability inherent in the system. Critique as pure negativity, critique as oppositional consciousness that is always against. And so I'm against all sorts of things, but what good is that? And in a system such as advanced capitalism that vampirizes everything and makes a profit out of everything, just being against is not enough. One of the tragedies of so much of the European left is that they're still absolutely self-satisfied in being so completely, radically against everything that's happening. Well, what good is that?
Like
so instead
Rumsfeld.
of the sterility of that, having the courage to say, okay, within this system, here we can have a praxis that consists in actualizing, in taking the risks of actually operationalizing alternatives, and instead of indexing them on a pre-given teleology, by the way, Marxism itself had a pre-given teleology, a Hegelian philosophy of history, instead of doing that, thinking more in evolutionary terms.
In?
Evolutionary terms. Something about a set of evolutionary transitions, a set of transformations that would actually engender qualitative shifts in what we are in the process of becoming. And the idea of a real, whether it is a moral evolution, spiritual evolution, technological evolution, I would say at this point, a physical, our bodies are changing so rapidly, I would almost say a somatic revolution of sorts, but an evolutionary mode, but again, not in the fixed Darwinian sense of the term, but something that is projective, that is still to come. I would say for me the key term is adaptation. It's not Darwinian in the sense of the survival of the fittest, which has become a whole social political philosophy, but a sense of adaptation fundamentally to our techno-scientific universe.
But isn't adaptation just reactive?
Not if you do it with the Guattari's idea of the three ecologies, the social ecology, the psychic ecology, and the environmental ecology. I think the idea of a multi-layered ecology that would allow us to precisely engage with the conditions of the present, but in a manner that enhances transformations of who we are, of our very bodies.
Tell me about Love of the World. This is so wonderful. Thank you so much.
It's a citation from Hannah Arendt that I think to whom I have a complicated relationship, but I think it applies just as beautifully to the Spinoza's political philosophy that Deleuze and Guattari theorized, and I had then adapted to my own purposes, the idea of gratuitousness. That if we want this evolutionary leap, this shift of quality in who we are becoming to actually be actualized, we need to do things just for the hell of it and simply move out of this neoliberal notion that everything has to be entrepreneurial, that we are the owner of this particular slice of space and time, which is our embodied self, and that we have to capitalize on it. Actually open up to the notion of gratuitous, for the hell of it, for the love of the world. Art would be one of the prototypes of this. Philosophy, unfortunately, is not. It is so institutional, it's so stuck in its own protocols of reasons and bureaucracies, of procedures, and it is quite despairing. But to take the risk of what we would have called in the old days love, to just do it because it feels right, because.
I'm asking you so many more questions than I'm allowed to, but do you mind? Can I ask you one other question? Do you think that your cells are schizophrenically at once individual cells, but also moving through time at the scale of you? You know, do you think there's some sort of schizophrenia like that would be in love with humanity and yet an individual, or moving through time?
I wouldn't call that schizophrenia. I think that Guattari calls it the cosmic. It's the ecological and cosmic dimension. People, even with outside French philosophy, are talking about the planetary dimension of contemporary social problem and contemporary theories of the subject. The planetary dimension, everything that we do through the technology, of course, we will live forever and we will be dispersed across the globe, but through also the transformations that we are enacting in our own bodies through our science and technology, we are becoming much more expanded than we used to be. I'm a secular person. You can do this with spirituality, of course, but the notion of a cosmic dimension to our actions has to become part of what we are. If our science and technology are that way, we are such things as dreams are made of, and these days those dreams are enacted in really global, worldwide connections. We have to reconnect to the cosmic, cosmic.